Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. Back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah.
Sometimes in the world, news happens. And in the world of FPV, when news happens, one team is there to cover it. It's JB and ItsBlunty.
Welcome.
This is what I think about while I'm listening to the music, Blunty. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, Joshua?
I'm good. Blunty, I once had a, if you go back at the right time on my channel, you can hear, I once had a really bad cold and I lost my voice and my voice got super deep. I could barely talk. And when I did talk, it sounded like that. And I made a recording of a movie announcing in a world, and it was like in a world, it was about me doing FPV videos. Instead of saying I want to be a movie announcer. What's your dream? What do you want to be when you grow up?
Stand-up comedian. I'll probably do that at some point.
Oh man, I could see it. It's I also sometimes aspire to be a stand-up comedian, and I didn't. Instead I just used my material here on the live stream.
Yeah, fair enough.
And welcome to you guys as well. Welcome to the live stream. It is time for the news, FPV news, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is now. You're here, you knew that. And we're going to go over with so many things this week. What do we have this week, Blunty? Give us a rundown of the topics.
All right. So this week, Shark Byte, they did their 2-week update as they promised. So
Yay!
we're going to talk about that.
They said they would, and then they did, and that's the first thing you got to do.
Yeah, and it's not hollow, so it's
yeah,
pretty cool.
No, there's meat there.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
We've got a tiny Blackbox Logger that's smaller than an SD card. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep. If you don't have that Blackbox logging on your quad, That'll be very interesting.
Race Day Quads has finally filed the lawsuit against the FAA. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, good.
The ZTAG drone laser system is finally shipped and launched. So we'll talk about that a little bit.
If you want to practice shooting down other drones with your drone, this is one way to do it.
DJI Assistant has been having an issue on macOS Big Sur, and we'll talk about how to fix that.
Yeah, this is a specific... DJI has been having a lot of issues with this launch. This is a specific issue that affects you if you're running macOS Big Sur. Are there a lot of the... What's Big Sur? Anyway.
I'm not a Mac guy either, but it's a later operating system in Mac, and apparently a lot of people are having an issue with it. So,
and we have the fix, thanks to a user. That's why you're here.
We've got a cool LED board project for visualizing motor issues.
Nice, yeah.
I did an interview with FPV.Blue, an older HD video system creator. If you guys want to check that out, we'll talk about that a little bit.
And there will be those who say that promoting your own content on this live stream is favoritism and nepotism, and I will say, yeah, of course. But also, it's a really great interview. You actually got some really interesting exclusives from this guy who I want people to stick around for this segment. I'm gonna spoil it a teeny bit. This guy tried, if you don't know FPV.Blue, he was trying to invent a high-definition, long-distance digital control link for FPV for years. And he has some deep insights into what Fat Shark needs to do to beat DJI and why he is no longer in the game.
Yeah.
This is a great interview. We're going to spill a little bit of beans about it, but people obviously should go watch it too. Anyway, continue.
So we've got a couple community spotlights, a few of them this week. We're going to show some frame resonance analysis, some actual science in this hobby with Chris Rosser. Really fascinating stuff. That's super cool.
Yeah. If you have jello in your camera or your flight controller gyro is freaking out and you suspect it's your frame, maybe it is your frame.
Yeah. We've got another community spotlight with Pawel Spakowski. He's got a DIY motion controller like the DJI controller. You can make it home with a 3D printer and some electronics.
Love it.
We've got another community spotlight. We've got your logo on a drone with the hologram.
And when this guy said, "I'm going to put your logo as a hologram on a drone," I was like, okay, cool. And then he sent me the video and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I watched the video and I was like, oh. That's pretty badass.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how CycloneFPV has been helping out customers that can't activate their DJI goggles, like we talked about before, by actually shipping them a broken down drone. Pretty cool.
By broken down, he doesn't mean what you think he means.
We've also got the longest drone flight on record, a 13-hour drone flight at 205 miles. We'll talk about how that's possible.
Yeah, yikes! 13 hours. I mean, you need a what do they call it? A meal break in the middle of that flight. Gonna have a flight attendant bring you some peanuts. Some water.
We've got a drone lawsuit where we found that images from a drone need a warrant in Michigan. It's kind of interesting precedent they're setting there locally. Talk about why that might impact people there and what that could do.
Yeah. Okay.
Iflight, their Beast H7 has a bidirectional Dshot issue. We'll explain what that is and why you need to be concerned about it. And a little bit.
If you own an Iflight Beast H7, then I'm afraid we have bad news. You know that thing we talked about a minute ago where there's a problem and then we have the solution? That's not this.
Well, we do have a solution, but you lose part of the functionality on the flight controller if you use the solution. So
not a perfect solution. If you have a Beast H7, stick around for that one.
And last but not least, Israel has started getting serious about drone delivery, and they've actually been live testing a control room and dispatch system. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Nice, awesome. Alrighty. Oh, just need to stretch here. Get ready. And here we go. Let's dive in with Shark Byte. And Shark Byte said a little while back, they sort of, one of the places Fat Shark excels we're going to talk later in the FPV.Blue segment about what Shark Byte needs to do to beat DJI. But one of the places that they have always excelled is in sort of being members of the FPV community. You'll notice I didn't say responding to feedback from the FPV community. Can we have a power button, please? That only took years. But they're in the FPV community, and they're sort of doubling down on that by promising that they're going to do development updates on Shark Byte. Like Shark Byte we want it to be better. We're going to tell you what we're doing. And you and I, when we were talking about the show, we said, well, next week we'll either say here it is, or we'll say they didn't do it, and they did it.
Yeah. And there's a couple different ways this could have gone. I mean, they could have easily put out a 1 or 2, paragraph statement that they're slowly working on things, and eventually they'll release more info and stuff, because it's only been, 2 weeks since they've asked for this feedback. But instead what we got is quite an extensive list of things. They kind of seem to have detailed most of the feedback they received, and have kind of gone through a gamut of different changes that they're going to implement. They've already, done a couple things, like they're already going to include a longer firmware flashing cable with their new units when they ship. That's just a small change they could do that people asked for. They're going to allow race directors to use special channels if you contact them to unlock special channels. They're talking to devs for other firmwares to do OSD implementation that they haven't done before. There's a lot of stuff like that, but also it seems like they're committing to hardware changes too. They've talked about they're going to look into larger and better cameras. They're going to look into a next generation VTX where there's better penetration, more range, higher power, better thermal management. Basically everything you would ask from a new VTX. Yeah. They're talking about, and I think kind of the big thing for me, since I don't have Fat Shark goggles, they're talking about an all digital goggle solution, basically a native digital goggle that they are working on and may release.
Yeah, really good stuff. Listening to the community and delivering what the community is asking for, and just showing that you're paying attention. Honestly, you can have a less capable product, and people will still buy it. I will still buy it if I feel like you're paying attention to me and you're caring. I just want a hug. That's all I want. Especially the digital goggle is so exciting if they can really go back to the drawing board and deliver something. Like I want it to have please let it have OLED screens.
Yeah, it says we are even working on a new look for them. So I assume that they're not going to be the standard Fat Shark, bar or whatever.
They're not going to reuse the Dominator shell again.
Yeah. So, and with this whole thing, they still say, we're going to work on, listen to your feedback. Do you like what we're doing? They added a true pit mode, I guess, and they're asking people to test that. Tell them if that's the pit mode they're asking for, because they're not actually super clear on exactly what people want. It's just a lot of interaction with users. I'm interested to see how long they keep this up, but I think it's super cool to see.
Arcont in the chat asks Arcont, C-H-O-N-T, just to be clear as to what word I was saying there. Arcont in the chat says, is Fat Shark going to stick to Divimath chips? Obviously, no one knows what Fat Shark is going to do, but Divimath is the solution they have worked hard at. They have so much investment in Divimath. It seems unlikely that there's anywhere else for them to go other than maybe something we'll talk about in the FPV.Blue segment.
Yeah.
Needs a higher output power, says Adam Victor. True, but they're already struggling with their thermal management. They could barely get the thing where it is without melting it. So I don't see them. I mean, if they could just flip a switch and have higher output power, surely they would. So there's a reason that they haven't. They need to figure that out. But it sounds like they're aware of that and they're trying to work on it. So
yeah,
good, excellent. All right, Fat Shark, keep it up. Keep up the good work. Next up, Blunty, you brought us a tiny Blackbox Logger, and I'll tell you, when I first saw this, I immediately thought of the Open Logger device, not an Open Logger, but an Open Logger. That's this little thing that some of you may have seen.
Yeah.
And that is not what this is.
No.
Here's the Open Logger.
So the Open Logger is a really cool solution. There's just a couple issues with it. One is that $20 isn't super cheap.
No kidding.
You also need to add an SD card. So you have the weight of the Open Logger plus the SD card, and it's a little bigger than the SD, plus you have to add an SD to it.
Well, I'll say one more thing about the Open Logger. It breaks. It's got this flip-up door for the SD card, and if you don't mount it right or it comes loose, it's just destroyed. It's not as durable as you might hope.
So they basically, somebody designed, this guy here, Alex Eston, I guess, designed a tiny black box. And this is an open source hardware project and software that you can use for an open source Blackbox logger that altogether with data flash chip on it, 16 megs, is smaller than an SD card.
So the downside here is a 16 meg data flash is going to last you a few flights. Depending on how you're logging, how fast you're logging, you might get 2 or 3 flights, you might get 5 or 10 flights, but you're not going to be able to fly 20, 50, 100 flights all day like you can with an SD card. Yes. But the upside is it's completely self-contained, very lightweight, inexpensive. Is it for sale, or do you have to build your own?
Right now, I don't know that anybody's for sale on these. I'm actually going to look into trying to make some of these and put them up on my store if possible, but because they are open source hardware projects. So, but yeah. I would encourage anybody, if you have the ability to make these and sell them.
Well, surely somebody like Airbot is going to make them and sell them.
Yes, I hope so, because these are excellent devices. You know, and you talked about the 16 meg limit. Also, we talked before about 4.3 options, and in looks like in Betaflight 4.3, we'll be able to reduce a lot of those black box things that we're not using, and cut out a lot of data that we don't need. So we could log hopefully more logs onto that 16 meg flash.
I've wanted that forever. Like Betaflight logs all this data, and so often when I'm recording, the only thing I care about is the stick positions, because I'm recording like a tutorial or a freestyle flight, and I just want the stick overlay. And if you had just the stick positions recorded, that data flash chip would, I mean, potentially it would go for 20, 50 flights without filling up the chip. And Betaflight 4.3 will give you the option to turn off individual black box logging elements. I'm really excited about that. Dominic Clifton says, that's neat. W2 5Q 128 equals good flash chip. I assume he would know.
Yeah, it's also only 11 components. It seems to be a slick design. Yeah, Dominic Clifton says he can make them. I know a bunch of people would buy them.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they're, I mean, I don't know what the price would be. I have no idea what the bill of materials and then markup would be, but presumably it's not going to be $20. Right.
And I feel like on most builds, you can find a place to slide a 0.5 gram SD card sized logger. It's a lot easier than trying to fit an open logger.
You could stick it on the back of your, because you're not going to have to get at the SD card. You could stick it on the back of your camera. Wait. How do you get the data off of it? With SD card reader, you pull it out.
Yes. So basically, you are going to connect the flight controller to the PC. You put it in a read mode, and then you run a Python script, and it'll pull it right off the logger.
It doesn't mount as like a USB drive like Betaflight builds in one. That would be cool. That's like, I wish they would do that.
Unfortunately, I think right now that's a limitation of the setup.
Okay. So still not perfect, but something getting there.
I think it's sort of one of those things where like they were trying to get the size down, and I think to get the size down, there's like a limitation of the ability.
Yeah, because they show right here, like, look how small this thing is. You want black box logging on a freaking toothpick or a tiny whoop? I mean, if even an SD card is too big and too heavy for you, there you go. It certainly is going to fit into a niche. It's pretty slick. Alrighty. Let's go on to the next one. We're going to talk about the Race Day Quads lawsuit. I will say I did an interview with Tyler Brennan and Jonathan. I'm always blanking on his last name. Jonathan, the lawyer. I did an interview with them just yesterday. It's in editing. It's going to come out on my channel this week. It's about a half hour, 40 minutes where they talk about some of the things. And I know they've been doing the rounds because they just actually made good on their promise to sue the FAA.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were wondering, like, oh, is this going to go through, or remote ID, passed, and it doesn't seem as bad, that sort of thing. But they're kind of saying that, like, they definitely want to go full steam ahead on this. They're still collecting money. They're still pushing it all forward. They filed the lawsuit. And they've also said, Tyler has said, I and other anonymous individuals believe that the remote ID rule was changed not because they care about us or listen to us, but because the remote ID network they originally proposed simply is not ready. When it is ready, it will be imposed on us unless we fight remote ID now. So they're basically trying to plan for an eventuality they think will happen.
Yeah. And I pardon me. I asked him about this in the interview, and he basically said, don't drop your guard, because there was this big, I made the analogy that when we first saw the NPRM, it's like the FAA said, we're coming for you and we're cutting off all of your fingers. And then the rule came out and it wasn't as bad as we thought. And it's like they said, oh, okay, we're only cutting off 2 of your fingers. And everybody was like, well, we're not happy about it, but it's better than it could have been. And what Tyler's saying is they're coming for the rest of your fingers. Okay, it's a morbid analogy, but he thinks
nothing
we have to
says
fight
they
him
can't
now.
take the rest of your fingers.
And what I think the fear is that people will look at remote ID as it currently stands and say, I can live with that, and then lose the passion for the fight. And then 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when remote ID is ready, then they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, now we're going to make it worse. And he's like, forget it. We're stopping this. We're heading it off. We're stopping it right at the beginning. So they have like filed the paperwork that says we intend to sue you. I don't know what the official name of it is, but there's no actual legal arguments being made yet. So we still don't know how they actually intend to approach the fight. But there you go.
Yeah. 507RC in the chat points out, at this time shows up a lot in the remote ID regulation.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They wanted this network requirement that would have your drone continuously broadcasting its location and other identifying information through like the cell network to a database every time you fly, all the time, in real time. That's an oversimplification, but it's somewhat true. And I think they overreached, and it just wasn't possible to implement that today. And so they rolled back on it. But they didn't do that because they're nice or because they heard our voice, is Tyler's argument. If you have fewer fingers, it's harder to fight them cutting more fingers off, says in 3Frame. I came up with that analogy because we saw the final ruling, and I was like, oh, this isn't as bad as it could have been. And people were like, how could you be happy about this? And I'm like, look, I'm not like happy, but I'm relieved. It could have been worse. So.
Yep. Yeah, I guess the question, the real question there is, did they have any care about us, like Tyler says, or was it strictly because they didn't have the ability to do any more than they did? Or did they play nice because they couldn't do their crazy stuff?
I think there's no way to know unless you're like literally in the meetings with the decision makers. I feel like they had to have heard our voice somewhat. Yeah. I hope. I don't know. Speaking of I'm going to inject one thing here that's not on the agenda. Speaking of the fight against the FAA, one of the ways that I am trying to help fight this is by helping to make the Flow State FPV drone documentary. And although it's a passion project of mine and something I've wanted to do just because I love FPV, and I'd love for there to be a documentary film about FPV and the FPV community, it is also being driven by the threat that remote ID presents, the goal being to get positive information and awareness of FPV out there into the world so we have more people to fight on our side. And this weekend, I'm going to Asheville to see the very first test screening of the film.
Awesome.
We rented a theater, and it's invitation only, very small, select crowd, and so it's getting closer and closer to coming out. So
nice.
Just want to put that out there.
I'm excited to see it. I think a lot of people are excited to see it.
If you wanted to come from Denver, you'd be welcome. I can get you in. I know that's a lot to ask, but
yeah, we'll talk about it.
All right. What's next?
ZTAG, we talked about a little bit before when we talked about some different laser tag solutions, has launched finally their laser tag solution. It's a little bit DIY, but it's pretty cool that they've got something on sale and available for you to pick up. So basically this is the one we showed before where you kind of get you're just using the little view in your camera. So you're mounting it right in front of the camera as your OSD for the system. And they've got a few different teams now. So they've got a domination mode where you can like fight each other with colors, and play zombie mode where you absorb each other's colors, stuff like that. Different game modes. But basically, you just buy the little boards, and then you'll put the boards into some 3D printed mounts for whatever quad you have. And you can fly away and do some laser tag.
Yeah, the cool thing about this system is that it doesn't require any sort of integration into the quadcopter. Like, you don't have to solder it to your flight controller or your receiver. You just put it so you can see it in the camera, and it's completely self-contained. And that's pretty cool.
ZTAG is in the chat, and he says Rotor Riot will be stocking them too.
Oh, there he is. ZTAG RC. Rotor Riot will be... Well, that's awesome.
I think he's also... I think he said he's demoing those at Rampage on some Cinewhoops.
Nice.
And they're going to do like a spec class of them, basically, so they can sell a certain mount and have like a game and stuff. So pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that's exciting. It sounds really fun. I got to play Velocidrone Combat this weekend and last weekend. After my Sunday live stream, I played Velocidrone Combat with some of the folks from my Discord server and Ciati's Discord server. And I got to say, dogfighting, I would have thought that dogfighting with drones would be just too sort of twitchy and frenetic and not really fun. To be fair, Velocidrone Combat does specifically use these great big, slow, lumbering drones for dogfighting, but it was really fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, I've played it a little bit. I want to get like a foot pedal for the shooting.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a key, but seems pretty cool.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out Velocidrone Combat, it's basically a first-person shooter that you play with drones. You chase each other around the map, shooting each other. And it's super... And I think... Do you think it makes you a better pilot?
I would 100%. Yeah, any stick time. I always tell people any stick time is better. And if you're controlling the drone to go somewhere, fight somebody, like, you're going to learn something about muscle memory doing that. It's kind of like Quake almost with drones. Yeah. Because you get power-ups when you shoot different things and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Velocidrone Combat, little plug there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. What else have we got? So look forward to the ZTAG. And there's links. There's links in the video description to all the stuff we're talking about, in case that wasn't obvious. Go ahead, Blunty.
So if you've been having, or if you know someone with an issue with DJI FPV Assistant, or I think any DJI Assistant right now is having some of these issues, and you're on Mac OS Big Sur, you can use this fix from a user Caleb that submitted it to the FPV news at, sorry, what's the address?
News at fpvknowitall.com.
There we go. News at fpvknowitall.com. He submitted this too. And basically, this is a fix because for some reason, Mac OS Big Sur is blocking it with system integrity protection. So basically, this walks you through the ability to change that, to get it to work. Then it will connect to your goggles. Everything will activate and work properly. And then you can re-enable system integrity protection when you're done.
Yeah. And I just said, like, okay, yeah, good. I don't really use a Mac. But if there's people out there who are being affected by this and this helps them, then they should just, like, there's a link to this Imager album down in the video description, or you just freeze frame here and print it out on your printer like a boomer. And hopefully that helps some people. Let me get this super chat from Isaac Mitchell. Thank you for $5 super chat, Isaac. Thanks for being awesome and doing what you do. Blunty is amazing. I'm very grateful you guys make time for all of us. Well, thank you very much, Isaac. And Bags FPV says cheers. Thanks for $5, Bags. Let's see here. Anything else from the community?
So we've got an LED board is next up for diagnosing motors. And basically, this is kind of like RaceWire, but instead of RaceWire, where it's a pass-through, this is actually a inline solution. So basically, you can put this between your ESC and your motor. And these are actually wired in parallel, so you can see each light up when each FET powers on. So you can see that all 6 FETs are working properly.
Yeah, this is a good tool. I noticed this the first time I used Light Up RaceWire. The way that Light Up RaceWire works is that the motor current causes the LEDs to light up, and there's like 3 strips, and they equate to the 3 phases of the motor. and I noticed that when the ESC like would beep, it would go, I could see the individual phases. And the first time I had a blown ESC with a bad FET, I noticed that one of the LEDs didn't light up. And I was like, oh my God, this race wire is such a good troubleshooting tool. But you may not want it on your quad for whatever reason. So in this situation where you've got a motor that won't spin and you're not sure if the ESC is fried, you could totally just see whether the ESC is sort of firing to spin the motor. And it's a great little thing. Now, this is also open source?
Yes. Yeah. Then there's a link in there. This is like a blog article, but there's a link in there. If you scroll down a little bit to the Hackaday project, it's the first link in that article.
And it's up on OshPark as well.
Yeah. So he actually has a link to OshPark, so you can order the boards straight off the OshPark link.
Now that'll just be a naked PCB. You have to solder it up yourself, or do they do the solder? Do they make it for you?
I believe it's a naked PCB, and then you'll do the soldering yourself with the components he offers, or he says to use, basically.
So once again, someone out there, Race Day Quads, Pyrodrone, Airbot, someone, Iflight. This is an open source project. Anyone could make this. It's a cool little thing, and if you're selling it for a couple bucks, go ahead, Monty.
And so to be clear, I think the major difference between this and the typical race wire is a race wire is not wired basically per phase, like with 2 LEDs to represent each FET. So with race wire, sometimes you don't see one of the FETs going bad. With this, you can literally see the individual FETs that are bad. So if 3 FETs were bad, you would see 3 LEDs go out on this.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah, it says here, if everything is operational, the red and green LEDs on each phase should glow evenly. But if there are problems, because the blinking will become erratic or one or more LEDs fail to light at all.
So I think this is more of a diagnosis tool than RaceWire would be, whether it's like, hey, it's getting through or not. This will tell you like what's exact, kind of more a better idea of what's wrong. Yeah. Because of the way it's wired in parallel.
Really slick. Really slick. Good stuff. Looking forward to seeing that. Either people, obviously, if you can, a lot of people aren't going to be able to solder this up on their own. I wouldn't want to go at you need a hot air gun, and you wouldn't really need it. Soldering, you wouldn't be able to do it with a soldering iron. But I think a product like this is useful enough. Somebody will start making them if you don't want to build it your own. Build it yourself.
Yeah.
I got a $20 super chat here from ZTAG RC, thanking us for the mentions. We really want to bring pilots together with a new FPV experience, also looking to connect with clubs and leagues out there. You know, Blunty, I said ZTAG might be like playing Velocidrone Combat in real life. The difference being that if you get hyper fixated on trying to shoot somebody out of the air and then you crash, well, in Velocidrone Combat, you're just like, okay, I just get back up again. But in real life, not so much. So, watch
consequences.
Out.
Yeah, when you do that dive to go catch somebody, you got to make sure you can pull out.
Yeah. Grim FPV, you're right. You can wire up standard LEDs to the motors to do the same. This is not a complicated idea. It's just a convenient and clever, way of doing it. So
yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about this interview, Blunty, that you did with the owner of FPV.Blue. What can you tell for people who don't know, who was FPV.Blue, and why should we care what they say?
So FPV.Blue he actually started the first project back in 2012, he said, but his first PCB he developed was 2015. And basically FPV.Blue was an attempt to use off-the-shelf solutions to build an HD video system by one person in his house as a hobby project to break even to try to develop HD video for the hobby. It was literally a passion project. He was never planning to make money. He lost money, on the project. And it was literally just to see hey, can I do this? It seems like I could do this, and he did it. He definitely did it. It's pretty incredible to see.
He had a working system. He actually, I talked to him once, and we were talking about me doing a review of his system, and I ended up not doing it, although I would have to go to my emails to remember the exact reason I ended up not doing it. Either it was the cost or the performance, I don't remember.
Latency was likely the issue, because came out as a wing solution, so I think the lowest latency they got was around 58 milliseconds glass to glass. And that was just because something we talk about, which is ASIC design. There's a big issue with these solutions where you need a quality ASIC to do the work in the systems. Otherwise, you're working on decoding and encoding latency.
Well, let's and what's an ASIC?
I don't know what ASIC stands for, actually, but
Yeah.
ASIC is basically a hardware chip that has a bunch of hardware pathways that are set up for you to do a bunch of math, I guess is the best way to do it.
Great.
So
It's like I think it's like taking a computer program and encoding it in the hardware design, as opposed to having a general purpose microprocessor that can do lots of things. So ASICs are extremely fast at doing one thing.
Yes.
And the problem is they're extremely expensive to develop. Because if you make an ASIC and you're like, you know what? Turns out I wanted to change that a little. Sorry. Because making the silicon dies and whatever
So we actually discussed that may not be the case because DJI seems to have a situation where they found a way to have a hardware front end for the ASIC, but they can program with software a controller for the ASIC. And somehow that's because obviously they pulled 50 megabits per second out of their butt. So if they had, obviously that was either somehow where hardware encoded into the ASIC originally and they unlocked it, or they have some ability to work differently with the information coming out of that ASIC. A lot of people in chat want to make sure we know that it's the application-specific integrated circuit, which makes sense because you're building it for the application.
NiStack says, so it's basically an FPGA without the P. Yeah, so a field programmable gate array, I think is what FPGA stands for. Yeah. And the difference is an FPGA is programmable, whereas an ASIC is locked in. And DJI has these custom ASICs. And when we say that the reason DJI, I said famously, I will own this till the day I die. I made a video saying that high definition FPV was nearly impossible and talked about all the reasons it was difficult. And the gist of it was that it would cost so much money to develop a system to do it that it would not be worth it for anyone in FPV to do it. And I stand by that. DJI came from outside FPV and made it happen by putting, among other things, just tons of money into developing these ASICs. So when we talk about the clickbait title, what Fat Shark needs to do to beat, Fat Shark is using these DiviMath systems, right now.
Yes. So what I'll tell you is David, that I talked with, the owner of FPV.Blue, claims that they are already using a custom ASIC. So they originally used the DiviMath ASIC, which is the AT chip, AT936X, I believe. That's one of the AT chips. He thinks that they are already using a custom ASIC. It's just not that great. It's basically a poor. What he says is a poor ASIC. It's unfortunate. It is an ASIC, is basically what he says.
Okay, fair enough. We'll take him at his word there. We don't really know.
Yeah. And so that's the unfortunate thing is kind of what they need to do is actually develop a new ASIC. They spent money on the ASIC that they already made, and it's likely that it doesn't have any room for improvement noticeably enough to be, like you're not going to buy a better camera and suddenly it's going to be 20% better because the ASIC is a limiting factor based on coding and de-encoding. And the one thing I'll say is, obviously the interview is an hour long, but one thing he talks about is if you just do the math for how much it takes to encode a signal that's 720p and send it over the air at 55 or 60 frames a second, it's like 55 gigabits a second. So you have to do some compression. And obviously they're doing some compression of that signal, and it depends on how good their other side is to get that latency out. And it seems like that's the issue, is just the ASIC can't do the work enough to pull it back into a nicer signal, and then you get what you get.
Yeah, the amount of work being done to make a high definition, low latency FPV link is ridiculous. As soon as you start opening it up and you see what they're really doing, it's extraordinary. But you've got this interview with him where you talk about the history of FPV.Blue. Is FPV.Blue out of business now?
Yeah, he's totally done. Totally done.
Yeah, didn't make it.
I even
before
asked
his
him,
time.
I asked him if his technology is applicable and stuff. We kind of go over everything to different companies and that sort of thing. So I'll just say that his most exciting thing in the industry right now, he thinks, is Orca HD, because it's going to be open and they're working with some good people. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Orca is working on, supposedly, they say, working on a digital FPV system. And people are like, where is it? And recently the CEO of Orca was on Facebook saying, look, we're going to release it when it's ready. We're not going to jump the gun and release it early. I wonder who he could be referring to. So it should be very interesting. There is linked down in the show notes in the video description below. There's an hour-long interview on Blunty's channel. and I haven't watched it yet, but I'm going to watch it because it sounds like there's some really interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. We have got some community spotlights coming up. Community spotlight means that we focus on a small project being done by an FPV community member that we think deserves additional attention. And the first place we're going to start is with this series of videos. This guy's name is Chris Rosser. He came out of nowhere. I've never heard of him before. And he is like a CAD engineer, a materials engineer. I don't know what his title is. And
Hi, everyone. My name's Chris. I'm an
He's an arrow. There you go. He's an aerothermal engineer. What's that, Blunty? Go ahead.
And
this resonance at 100 hertz.
he's actually doing all the stuff to
our
popular frames. So he's actually taking requests. He actually released a video about 30 minutes before we went live on on the Armatan Marmot. And everybody's been complaining about Armatan. And he looked at it.
If you really I can say from personal experience, if you release a video talking about resonance and oscillation on an Armatan frame, it's gonna provoke a response from the owner of Armatan.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd love to see him release some actual science, because this is some actual science to show you what's wrong.
Yeah, check this out. Well, this is the source one.
Yeah,
this is the source one.
Yes, the source one v4. So he goes through and looks at what are called resonance modes. So essentially, as you hit each level of resonance, you're going to have a mode in which the quadcopter resonates. And so he's showing at each of these levels what's happening to the quad. So you can see here the arms are moving, but the gyro isn't necessarily moving, even though the arms can move wildly. Now, this is super. This is just to show you what would happen. Yeah, it's super exaggerated. This is like quarter of a millimeter, like very tiny movements that are happening. But this is kind of show you the idea. But as he moves up in resonance modes, he kind of explains, what's happening.
So let's see. Here we got a different resonance mode. This is on the roll axis and is causing this weird roll movement that will affect the gyro. You can see the gyro flipping back and forth. 227 hertz oscillation. They're moving sort of mostly on the yaw axis. And he's talking about how that won't affect the gyro. But he goes on to show a frame that he designed. I'll fast forward here. He's designed this frame, and I don't know what his experience is in frame design. Like, as I look at this on some level, I'm like, well, there's a like, I think these arm braces look like they may be a little thin. Like, I wouldn't want to take a hit on a concrete pole. But he's thought a lot about the resonance characteristics, and his argument is that this frame has like the optimal resonance characteristics.
Yeah. So basically his idea is that most people are running some sort of low pass filter. Even if you've got one left on, you've got one low pass filter above like 300 or 350. Even if you've cut out most of your filters. So if you've done that, he's moved his resonance up, because you're going to have some resonance somewhere. You've got to have some resonance modes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his thought was, let's move them up. So he's put them up near the top of the spectrum. So your low pass will start to cut them out automatically. And you're not going to see them in your logs, and you're not going to see them in quad performance, because your filters are going to filter them out, even with the lowest filtering you would typically use.
I'm super excited to see people applying, like when we talk about Mark Spatz, UAV Tech, applying science to PID and flight controller analysis. There are a lot of people who, I think you can criticize a scientific approach and say, here are some things you overlooked, here are some things you could have done better. But I don't think you can criticize the principle that a scientific approach is the right way to advance knowledge and advance the state of the art in the technology. So I think it's really cool. And I don't know how many other frame designers, like I know people do finite element analysis to look for weak spots in the frame and to optimize the weight. I've never seen anyone doing this kind of resonance analysis on frames before. Cue the people coming out of the woodwork in the comments to say they've been doing it for years. I think this is really freaking cool.
Yeah, in the modeling, the way he shows it and explains it, I think is really cool. I think that's part of the best part of these videos. Like I said, he does the marmot, and the thing that I find fascinating is that he basically goes and looks at the log and says, okay, there's a band at 250 hertz. So I'm expecting to see a resonance mode there. He jumps over, looks through the resonance modes, and finds a horrible resonance mode right around 250 hertz that he can show you and explain what's wrong. And then he goes through the frame design and explains why he thinks that this is happening and things they could do to change frame design to stop these resonance modes from happening. And his basic takeaway from the marmot was just that the problem is the arms are too wide, because that's good for crashing, but they're only 4 millimeters thick. So if they were thinner, and 4 millimeters, it might be okay. Or if they were thicker and wider, it would be okay. But it's because of the wideness with the thickness they have that creates the resonance.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of people. So a lot of people fly the Armatan Marmot, and the same thing I think was true on the Chameleon. A lot of people fly it, have no problem and love it. It's one of the most popular freestyle frames out there. No one can take that away. But a lot of people do fly it and have problems with mid-throttle oscillation specifically. And there been questions whether there's... And I've noticed like a 200-ish hertz resonance frequency on it when I worked on it. So
what I'll say is that one of the main... I would say a lot of people aren't going to notice this if you fly stock. Like if you just fly stock filtering, you're not going to see it because the filtering is just going to filter it out. If you start to cut filtering, like if you do a VTEC tune or a crunk tune, you start to cut your filters out and start to get that filtering down so you're improving prop wash and doing a real tune. That's when you're going to start to see these things express themselves. Yeah.
So I'm psyched about this. He posted his analysis on Facebook, and I don't know if it was my comment that sparked this or if he had, but I responded and said, I would love to see you validate this by comparing an actual frame to black box data from the frame. And like 3 days later, he had done it. And it totally validates his approach. Because anytime you're working with a simulator, maybe your assumptions of the simulator are wrong and your results are BS. But he's totally validated this approach. So now what I want to see is, I want to see him hook up with an actual, like a frame designer. Because like Ryan Harrell came out in his Facebook and he said, if you radius these cuts at like a 2 millimeter radius, then it would be easier to cut it with the bit on the CNC machine instead of having sharp edges. And I was like, if he hooks up with a frame designer, he could actually make a really cool frame.
Yeah. So, I'm super excited.
Yeah. And I hope he keeps doing this for more frames and showing the resonance on the frames. This is super great content.
He actually, a couple of people in chat have mentioned, and I mentioned to him immediately, I was like, you did a Source 1 V4, but I want to see a Source 1 V3 because that's the one I fly, and a lot of people have great resonance on a Source 1 V3. So he actually did that. He didn't make a video on it, but he sent me the data, so maybe he'll throw a video together of the Source 1 V3 because that's a common one as well that people ask about.
Well, the Source 1 was my suggestion because the CAD files are out there, so he doesn't have to he should just import the CAD files and be good to go. Cool. Yeah. All right. Discord, you still there? Discord's been quiet for like 7 minutes. You still alive, Discord? Okay, just checking. We've got people. Don't request the frames from me. I mean, I guess he might be watching the stream. You got to contact him. Go comment on his videos. His links to his videos are in the video description below. All right. Moving on. Yeah, what do we got?
Pawel Spakowski has a pretty cool project. He did a DIY.
And also handsome. So handsome. Oh, shit. Hang on, Blunty. Blunty, I muted you. I'm sorry, Blunty, I muted you. How long has he been muted? Did it just mute him? I just muted you, Blunty. Sorry, I tried to mute the YouTube video and I muted Blunty too.
Testing.
You're okay. He's back. Wait for the chat to catch up. The chat will catch up. Let's just double check here. I'm alive. Blunty's back. He's coming.
All right, cool. We can hear.
Okay, start over, Blunty.
So I was just saying, so Pawel Spakowski is an awesome creator. I love Pawel, but one of the coolest things about Pawel in this video is how excited he gets to fly this freaking quad. He is just jumping for joy to fly this thing. He thinks it's so cool that it works, and I just love that kind of thing. Like, he's making stuff that's fun for him to fly. It's like a passion project. That's my favorite kind of projects, and this is no exception. This is really cool, man. It does the same things, a lot of the same things the DJI FPV drone does. It just, or the DJI FPV motion controller does. It just uses a buddy box to the radio.
Yeah, so it's just exporting PPM signal to the radio, and that's being translated. You're not hearing the video clip just because I want to make sure Blunty's being heard. People in the Discord are joking that I shushed you again, Blunty, by muting you. Sorry, guys. I was trying to mute the YouTube video, and I muted Blunty by accident. This, to me, Blunty, feels like it goes... I'm just going to let the video play because it's so cool. It feels to me, Blunty, like this goes back to the heart of what FPV hobbyists, the FPV hobby, look how happy he is, was about. Like, it's been a long time since you were really hacking something together. And that's cool. It's cool to just be able to buy parts from a store and build a drone and fly it and enjoy it. But seeing this 3D printed prototype, hand soldered, doing a super cool thing, it really does my freaking heart good, honestly.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's just really cool. And it works so well. Like, I mean, you know, he threw it together. It's a ESP32 board, and he put an MPU 6050 gyro on it. He's eventually going to add some GPS stuff to it so you can get a location. He's going to make better throttle and stuff. But yeah, just a cool little project I wanted to point out.
He's so happy. He's so happy. I'm going to unmute him for a minute.
Yeah, look. Whee!
What a great time to unmute.
Whee!
Oh, that's so great. Now, I will say it's a little different. It is a little different than the DJI drone. The DJI FPV drone, the way it works is it actually puts a target in the goggles, a little dot on screen, and you move the drone by moving the target as the drone flies. True. So you can like just put the dot on a gap you want to shoot, and the drone will try and fly through the gap. You're not directly controlling the drone, whereas he's like directly controlling the drone by tilting his hand. So still some room for improvement, I guess. Yeah. But really slick. Yeah. All right. Well, Pawel, as I said, such a handsome guy. I only say that because people say that we look alike. Excuse me. They say he's the Polish Joshua Bardwell. I could see the resemblance. All right. Didn't want anybody to think I was making fun of it. See, look. It's not. I see the resemblance. What are the advantages compared to a regular remote? Shut up. It's just cool. It's just cool.
That's the point.
All right. Anyway.
It's fun. Did you see Pawel? Did you see how much fun he was having?
There are reasons why you might want a one-handed, because if you think about control systems typically start by giving you direct control over the system, and then slowly evolve away from you having direct control to you. So instead of saying, I'm going to control each individual drone motor, you say, I'm going to have a gyro and a flight controller and a PID loop, and I'm going to tell it how I want it to rotate. So you've abstracted yourself away from the control system slightly. So what this motion controller is doing is it's taking you one step more abstract. So instead of saying, I'm going to control the individual axes, you're saying, I'm just going to move it how I want it to move. And there's reasons why that might make sense, in addition to just being super cool.
Yeah.
Let me get a couple more super chats out of the way, Blunty.
Just gonna say, people are pointing out this is a great thing for one left FPV, the guy who flies with one hand. This is a pretty cool solution for people who don't want to learn to fly like that, or other people with disabilities who just want to have different options. Pretty neat.
Yeah. Let's see. Mosper, thanks for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Joshua and Blunty. Both of you have been very helpful. Love the content and keep up the great work. Robin Duckett, £5 in the super chat. Thanks for the content. I enjoy flying around your garden in liftoff. Yeah, it's really great. It's a really great simulator. Anytime I think, maybe I should move. One of the things on the no list is, but I'm in liftoff. I can't move. I don't want to move.
If you've never looked in the window, go look in the window.
Yeah, the side window of my house. I'm there.
Yeah.
Chris Patterson, Cinema, thank you for a $5 super chat. Is the Part 107 exam current with the FAA's new ruling? I'm taking the test Friday. I wonder if they have questions on flying at night, etc. Good question, Chris. Do you know, Blunty?
Yeah, as far as I know, it is not current right now. They haven't released the new one, so you'll still get the old one. Then when the new one comes active, I think right now is April 15th, the last I looked, was when it will actually become active. When that one becomes active, then you can take a recurrency test that will be free for just the new stuff, because you've gotten your old version of the license. Anyone who takes it after April 15th will not have to take recurrency. It'll be on the original, the 107 they take. But yeah, to do the new stuff, you have to take a recurrency test.
Just to do the new stuff.
To fly at night without waivers. Yes.
I do want to fly at night without waivers. That would be nice.
Yes.
There's a company out there that one of the products they offer is they'll help you get a night waiver. This is going to really screw them over. Oh well.
Yeah.
And Mr. Stubbs 12, thank you for that answer, Blunty. I didn't know the answer, so I'm glad you're here. For many reasons, but also that one. Mr. Stubbs 12, thanks for $5. It's just thanks for all you do. Okay, let's see here. The next community spotlight has to do with me. This guy, he said, I have a hologram drone. Hang on, I'm going to pause this video. He said, I have a hologram drone, and I will put your logo on the drone. Can you send me your logo? I was like, okay, sure. I really had no idea what he was talking about. So he sends me this video, and we have to show it. I'm going to play this. Now, at first, I was like, okay, what is happening here? Okay, I kind of didn't get it until I saw it in the daylight or the dusk light. Hang on 1 second. It's going to skip ahead. What? So it's a persistence of vision device, right? Hanging under a drone. That's pretty freaking badass. That's pretty badass.
It's pretty cool. So this is like one of those, like you said, the persistence of vision thing where like they spin a fan and then you have LEDs programmed to make the pattern, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, pretty neat. Good idea. I don't know why we haven't seen more of this, but this is a smart idea.
Yeah. It is not a projector. It is a spinning LED array that is changing the color of the lights as the thing spins. And the persistence of vision effect in your eyeballs causes it to look like it's, there you go. That's the last. It causes it to look like a single image. It's pretty freaking cool. So thank you for doing that. Who was that? The link to that video in the video description, of course. Drones Unlimited. Thank you very much for doing that. That's a really cool thing. As far as flying billboards go, it's probably going to need to get a little bigger before we have a flying billboard, but it's pretty freaking cool. Bad for Life says that turned out way better than anyone could have imagined. I agree. Go ahead, Monty.
I was just going to say, so we're going to move on to the next story. I'm really impressed with what these guys are doing. Tarek runs CycloneFPV. They've been pretty involved in the hobby in various ways, but I really think this is super cool. They basically have taken apart a DJI drone and put together only the important parts of the drone. And they're shipping it for free to their customers. They just pay shipping and cover it. And they ask you to return a piece of swag. And basically, you can activate your DJI V2 goggles that need a drone by getting this shipped to you. So you get it shipped to you the same day. You just take a video, you activate the drone with it and getting it all done. Your goggles will work fine with your air units and vistas after you use the drone to activate. Right. And you send it on to the next person in line.
Yeah, one of the weird things about all these people who are having trouble activating their DJI drone, or their DJI goggles, if you have the drone, you just bind to the drone and the problem goes away. But so many people don't have the drone. So Cyclone has, number one, just gone above and beyond for their customers. They've gutted this drone. So, that's a $700 drone that they're not going to sell. And they found a way to be able to send this out to their customers that the customers have no motivation to steal it, right? Because you can't fly it. It's just the guts that you can use to activate, and then the customer either sends it on to the next customer. I think how are they doing that, Blunty? Yeah,
right now I think there's enough people that want it that you basically just ship it UPS to the next person. I think max shipping you'll pay is like $15 or so for the weight, and it'll cover insurance and stuff. And you'll just get it onto the next guy. So
CycloneFPV gets the Chad of the month, good guy of the month for doing this for their customers. I have a video that I am going to release probably tomorrow. I just recorded it today because I just got fed up seeing people say, because Blunty, you found the solution where people could flash back to the old firmware. DJI made this possible, and now it's not working. People are saying in the comments of that video, I tried, it didn't work. What should I do? And there's no word from DJI about how to fix it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to release a video tomorrow with my opinion about that and a recommendation for who you should call. And CycloneFPV has beat me to the punch. They're like, we're not waiting for DJI to make it right. We're going to fix it for our customers. And good on them.
At this point, you know, we're a couple weeks out from this release. I cannot understand why we haven't seen any kind of firmware update. Like, if they knew the rollback worked, how have we not gotten a V101.01 that fixes this as well? It's freaking insane if they've identified this issue. It's just crazy. And
I have no idea. This is a showstopper issue. Like, you're selling $600, $550 whatever dollar goggles to customers, and the customers cannot use them. I would be so angry to have spent that much money on a product that and like, you need to be all hands on deck fixing this, and it can't be that hard to fix, right?
Yeah. It's not. So. We know. I mean, it's not. They have to enable an option in firmware. Somebody needs to talk to the right engineer to flip the right switch so that you can click a button when you haven't activated. It's not rocket science. This isn't like, it's just the bad chain of command. It's a multi-billion-dollar company who doesn't know how to talk to people. It's bad support agents. It's like, the whole thing is just garbage. It's just garbage. Really garbage.
Yeah. And so what I'm going to say in this video tomorrow, nobody's watching this live stream. I'm going to say that people need to keep contacting DJI support, who is unfortunately useless, because I mean, the support engineers are not the problem. They are just doing what they're told to do, but there is no clear messaging to them to train them on what people need to do, because there's no solution anyway. So what can they? They can't give you a solution that doesn't exist. But I'm going to argue that people should be contacting the store they bought it from and saying, look. Yeah. You either need to fix this for me, or you need to give me my money back, or give me another set of goggles that will work. Because if I spent $600 on a set of goggles and they didn't work for 2-3 weeks, I would be livid. And hopefully, when vendors start to feel the pressure, then they will apply pressure back to DJI, and maybe DJI will listen to them. But CycloneFPV beat me to the punch on that. So,
another thing to point out: a lot of people are saying that, like, you know, if you are having an issue where if you bind to an air unit or Vista and then you switch to drone mode and it unbinds, that is normal. Unfortunately, that is how it works. And that is also another thing that's like super easy to fix, it seems like, or something they should state is not fixable, because that's a big thing for people. If you're switching back and forth and you own both devices, you kind of, like, people are buying 2 goggles. That's insane.
No.
I've talked to multiple people that have 2 pairs of goggles just so they can bind to all their quads on one, because they have 8 quads. They don't want to rebind to all their Vistas when they go out to the freaking field, so they can also fly their DJI drone. Or if, like, I'm at the field and I want to fly this quad and then the drone and then this quad, I'm rebinding over and over again. It's insane.
I agree. I mean, it's easier than some things, but yeah. All right.
Well,
Pilot Extreme says just buy the drone from Amazon, activate, and then return the drone. Make sure the seller is DJI. That's actually...
I mean, it hurts DJI, so I don't think that's a problem.
DJI FPV drone.
RC Ritter in chat says, I have 2 goggles just for that.
Oh my God. You guys, I mean... Okay, whatever. I guess that's fine. Whatever. That's ridiculous, but that's fine. You shouldn't have to do that.
Some people can't even rebind to the drone. Like, they're having to, like, redo all the firmware and stuff to get the drone rebound after they come back from the air unit Vista side. It's just a mess. It's just, unfortunately, just a mess.
If you have $1,300 to spend, you'll get it back. But if you have $1,300, you can buy the combo, bind the drone, and then return the whole thing and get your money back from Amazon. I mean, that's a big freaking risk. Not many people may have that money. I mean, I don't know, but that's a workaround. I'm not going to recommend it because I feel like, I don't know, but thank you very much to people. Who was it who said, if you're in Arizona, let me know. Noisy Boys Garage. If you know someone who has the drone, they can help you solve the problem. Yeah. Anyway. Let me get a couple more super chats here before we finish out. We're going a little long tonight, but I bet that chat won't mind. Russell Katzner, thank you for a $20 super chat. Just wanted to say thanks for all the content, information, and entertainment. Thank you very much for the super chat, Russell Katzner. When is DJI going to address it, Joe Reagan? I don't know.
We can only imagine, if ever. Who knows?
Kenny SmoothX says, I just bought the DJI Goggle V2. It should get here in 2 days. Is there something I shouldn't do so I don't experience the problem? No, Kenny. No. The problem, when you get the goggle out of the box, you will be led down a path where you activate the goggle, you update the firmware, and either you will get to the end of that path and everything will be fine, or you will hit a stumbling block where you cannot proceed. Like it'll refuse to activate, or it'll say, please connect to the DJI drone in order to activate. And you'll be like, but I don't have that. So there's nothing it just depends on the state of the goggle that you get. And most people are fine, but there's nothing you can do to make it better or worse. So that's good news. Anyway.
Yeah.
All righty. Let's go ahead, Blunty, to talk about the... Oh my God, we got like 4 topics left. Jeez, I thought we were going to run short today, but I guess not. The longest drone flight on record. And when you said this, I was like, what? Like 1, 2 hours? No, 13 hours. How did they go 13 hours, man?
13 hours and 4 minutes. So they went 205 miles on a little trip here. And basically, they did this with an auxiliary fuel tank that converts gas into electricity. So essentially, this is a gas-electric hybrid drone. And this company has been developed for the sole purpose of building a long flying drone that can stay in the air for these 13-hour flights. You know, they show in the video, they take off right before sunrise and they land after sunset.
Yeah, gas-electric hybrid. I mean, there's no way to really beat the energy density of gasoline. There's a lot of things wrong with gasoline and liquid fuels, but they really are very dense. You certainly could build full electric drones with massive batteries, but the problem is that those things are getting into a size range where they're practically full-scale aircraft, and you're not going to just like, oh, I'm just going to have my search and rescue crew put one up. You're talking military application. So gas electric, put a couple gallons of gas on there, run a little generator, charge up your batteries as you fly. Pretty freaking slick. 13 hours.
One of the things they talk about is, like you said, for a police department or a search and rescue, fire department, something like that, to just put this thing up and have it up all day. You know, you have one thing up all day that's just taking care of everything, is watching the area, is coming back and forth. You're not having to bring it back, land it, find places that are safe. Like, yeah, there's so many different things that you can avoid by just having this drone up there the whole time.
Another advantage that I wouldn't have thought of until I talked to some people who do search and rescue, these guys, they have a lot on their mind. They have a lot of training to keep up with. The ability to simply pour gasoline into a tank and start the drone is something like they don't have to really learn about lipo safety like you have to if you're dealing with lipos, and you can instantly refuel it and be ready to go. It's pretty slick.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. So new record. Anybody want to beat the record? 13 hours and 4 minutes. That's the goal. I mean, it's going to get beat.
Yeah.
Pretty slick.
Seems like this is just their current attempt, but I'm sure they can squeeze more out of it.
Dominic Clifton says, I hope the motors have good bearings. That's a good point, Dominic. I mean, chances are that many multi-rotor motors are not designed to operate for 13 hours at a time. And you may encounter some failure modes that you wouldn't have expected under normal operation.
Yeah.
Gas fire if you crash, though. So there's that. Twin turbo Stang, you're not wrong. You would want this on an Octo, probably. So it would have some redundancy. All right, let's move on.
All right. So there was some press.
Drone lawsuit.
Yeah, there's some what might be some precedent set in Michigan by an appeals court, by the Michigan State Court of Appeals. Basically, the police used a drone to fly over a local residence of this couple. And it was a really messy backyard and stuff. It was a large backyard. So they flew over the yard at 300 feet, 400 feet, right under the ceiling where they're allowed to. They took a bunch of pictures and they brought them to court. And the court ruled that this is not the same as a plane. A plane could fly over and take pictures, but a drone is considered different to photos from an aircraft, because an aircraft is less likely to loiter, is much higher, and generally moves at a much greater speed. So drones are considered, in this case, by one of the judges, they said, to be intrinsically more targeted in nature than airplanes. And this sets kind of a different precedent than we've been hearing for a long time, which is that, you don't own the airspace above your house and you have some right to privacy, but, it's similar to an airplane, things like that. And we're seeing in this case, we had 2 judges to 1 say that essentially is not like an airplane. Drones should be treated differently. And this was a trespass or violation of privacy. And so they have to throw it out because they did not have a warrant to be on the property.
This feels like a win, but I worry about because a lot of the times RC aircraft pilots get to kind of come under the umbrella of full-scale aircraft. And people say, you can't fly over my yard. And they say, well, look, the national airspace, you don't have the right, and I can fly over your house. I'm legally allowed to fly over your house. Not legally allowed to look in your windows and whatever you're scared of me doing, but passing over your house is fine, just like as if I was a helicopter, just like as if I was a plane. And if you're going to have a precedent that says, well, actually drones are a little bit different. At first it sounds like, yeah, police shouldn't be able to spy on me with a drone. I like that outcome. But I'm a little worried about the precedent it sets.
Yeah, luckily this can still be appealed. I don't know if they're planning to take it to a higher appeals court or not, but if they did and it went to the federal court, it's possible that the FAA could get involved and there could be different considerations here, because currently this is just Michigan State handling this. So if the federal government looks at this and says, hey, this airspace, I don't really care what you say, that sort of thing. It depends on how this all works out, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you could argue there's a way to kind of split that difference. You could say a drone is an aircraft and is regulated by the FAA exactly like any other aircraft. However, there are different types of aircraft, and this particular type of aircraft, it's not okay to spy on people with. So, but I feel like that nuance may get lost.
Yeah.
Anyway, very interesting.
A couple of people are saying this is about not having a warrant, but my understanding is it's about not having a warrant because it's a trespass violation of privacy. So
right.
That's the concern.
I don't need the police. I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is the police don't need a warrant if there's something in your front yard and you can just see it from the street. They don't need a warrant for that. And typically you would not need a warrant to fly an aircraft over someone's house and take pictures of stuff that was visible from the backyard, because the national airspace is seen as public in the same way that being on the street is seen as public. So they didn't have a warrant. They didn't think they needed a warrant.
And one of the 3 judges on the appeals court did side on that side and said that the airplane should be considered like an airplane. You can't just basically, they were worried about setting precedent is what it sounds like. And they were worried that you can't just blanket say that a drone is different than an airplane because you feel like it's different. I guess they wanted more evidence in the case or more things to show that. And they felt precedent had been set for a plane standard, and that's what they went with. So it's interesting to see it was 2-1, not unanimous.
As much as this might feel like a win, if it does stand, the only thing that's going to happen is next time they'll get a warrant and they'll do the exact same thing. So it's not like, oh yeah, we're free, our backyards are safe. Anyway, I'm going to have to go get those. I'm going to have to get some stuff out of my backyard after this live stream. So we'll have to finish up pretty soon. Everybody knows what's in my backyard. All right, cool. Two more things. This is the one for the people who have the Iflight Beast H7, and they're trying to get bidirectional Dshot working and RPM filtering working. And as soon as you enable bidirectional Dshot, motor number 3 stops working. Is that right, Blunty? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Basically, on 4.3 or any other Betaflight version, if you don't run BLHeli-M 16.9, for some reason that one will fix this issue. On 4.2.6, you can run 16.9 BLHeli-M, and that will correctly run bidirectional Dshot and report properly. If you run 4.3 Betaflight, they've made a change to the H7 code. And essentially the way they've built the board, they're claiming that there is some physical issue that prevents them from properly using the Betaflight code, and Betaflight's not changing it. So unfortunately, if you upgrade to 4.3, you lose the ability to do bidirectional Dshot, no matter what firmware you run on the ESC. I'm
so confused by this. And Dominic Clifton, I know you're participating over in the GitHub conversation about this, so maybe you can chime in. But excuse me, I'm confused about this because it sounds like how could if the flight controller is not outputting Dshot correctly, how could the ESC fix it? Sort of doesn't make sense. Sounds like it's outputting a Dshot signal that is in some way kind of messed up, and some ESCs will pick it out, and some will go, that's no good, I don't want it.
Yeah, maybe it's about size or transmission speed or something that changes in 16.9. Yeah, I'm not super clear on what's different there, but I have confirmed with another user. We fixed this for another user, and it did work for them to flash 426 and 16.9. Running in different versions of JESC and different ESC firmwares, they were actually seeing the wrong RPM filtering number, and they were getting 100 times the RPM number. So they were getting 300K instead of 3K, and that was like scaling up as they would go up. So something is going on there.
Yeah, I would say, even if, I mean, I don't like to screw around with, I need my ESCs, like my batteries, to be as reliable as possible. When an ESC, if it like says, oh, you want me to spin the motors? Okay. Like that could go really bad. So even if like the ESC seemed to be working, I'd still feel a little bit uncomfortable with this situation.
Yeah, and another concern is that unfortunately, this means that in 4.3 is the only way you can use the barometer on this board, because it uses a special barometer. And so if you flash back to 4.26, you can't use the barometer.
Okay.
It's unfortunate.
So
just real quick, Bad for Life in chat is saying 16.9 still gave me the error on ESC3. Make sure you're on 4.2.6 and on 16.9, because I did have a user successfully fix that last night. The F7 Beast does run fine as well. This is an H7 implementation bug.
Right. So Iflight, unfortunately, I think that's not really going to be a fix, because they'd have if you have an affected board. Dominic Clifton says, yeah, they buggered up their FC design. That seems to be what some people are saying anyway. If it is a hardware issue in the board, then there isn't really going to be a way to fix it. Maybe work around it with specific Betaflight versions or something, specific BL Heli versions. But ultimately, if you have that board, you basically are going to have to jump through some hoops to get RPM filtering working, or not use RPM filtering working.
And their statement, Iflight's statement on their website currently is basically our B stage 7 is being updated to a V2. If there's a solution for H7 and BLHES, if they can figure that out, what they did wrong, or if not, they'll just upgrade it to BLHeli 32 so they don't have this issue, which I thought was interesting.
Well, that's what they should do anyway, right? BLHeli 32 is better. Just costs more money. Who cares?
So, yeah, I don't want to get into it, but is it really better?
It has more options.
Sure. I feel like music is the
variable PWM frequency and startup music. Yeah, it's better.
BLHEM, variable PWM frequency.
Variable?
Yeah.
Like
I'm
dynamic?
Sorry, okay,
dynamic?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Now we're getting actual dynamic. Yes, that's true.
Mike Bergman, I did ask Dominic Clifton about the OSD on the Iflight. He says they all support OSD. He doesn't know what you're talking about. I didn't. Dominic Clifton, the question I had in chat earlier about the OSD on the Beast H7, that was Mike Bergman. He's now outed himself. You guys can argue about it if you want to. He says you're wrong, Mike, and you also you're dumb and you look funny. I mean, that's paraphrasing.
He did not say that.
He didn't say that. All right. Okay, one more thing here. Israel gets serious about drone delivery. Drone delivery, commercial drone applications. Everybody knows it's coming, but nobody's actually doing it yet. But Israel apparently is getting ready. Tell us about it, Blunty.
Yeah, they've done some testing. They're doing pretty small-scale testing right now. But they've basically built a control room 35 miles away from the test center. They have an air traffic control style center set up with tracking for each drone. Each drone is required to have GPS trackers on them. They're also required to have parachutes, fail-safe systems, things like that, so that if something happens, they're not going to fall on somebody or break anything, hopefully. I thought it was pretty interesting because they're trying to do this like air traffic control. And they're saying, like, this is what we're going to need to do when we have drones in the air. You can't just rely on the drones to all handle themselves. So they're actually using a central control station to make sure everything's kosher, and like sending out data and calling people and making sure everything's correct, making sure this all works.
It's pretty slick. Pretty slick. Very innovative country, Israel. A lot of new technology coming out of there for such a small country. Pretty surprising. Who knows when we'll see something like that in the United States?
Yeah,
Patrick
Maybe not
O'Neill
too long.
says, I don't think drone delivery is happening. I think it's just a gimmick. I could, yeah, I hear you. We'll see. Make sure it's kosher. Lol, Israel. Thank you, Cans on Quads. On that note, we will wrap up. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Blunty, anything you want to... Blunty's channel, linked in the video description, of course. We're here every Tuesday at 6.
I think also in the title now, I think you can just click the title of this live stream, and I have there's a highlighted link to my channel now.
I think it's Blunty. Yeah, figured out.
And I've got that new interview with FPV.Blue, so make sure to check that out. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Is JB getting confused between Iflight and SP Racing? No, Dominic Clifton, I don't think so. Mike Bergman was talking about the SP Racing H7, I'm pretty sure. Not that I would never get confused, but I don't think so. Sorry, Blunty. Just want to make sure Dominic knows I'm not confused. How embarrassing if I called out the wrong name.
So if you haven't done it, make sure you subscribe to this channel. It's right under here. It takes one click. If you want to do another click, you can hit the thumbs up button. That's pretty easy. And we appreciate you guys being here. That was good news.
Yeah, you came up with a ton of content. I sent you a few of those things, but there was a ton of content. It's now we've gone almost a half hour longer, so people are getting a lot more value for their money. But that is going to do it. We're going to sign off, and we'll see you back here Sunday at 1 p.m. is my next live stream. Yeah, that's it. Blunty, you've kind of stopped live streaming. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to do content and hang out with other people. That's pretty much the plan.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. We're out of here. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.